I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and CEO of e-commerce agency Electric. And today I'm talking with Rich Watson, the founder of Augmented Hype, which is an augmented reality ad filter technology company. Thanks for coming on, Rich. Really excited to chat today.
Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
So I think this is probably one of the first guests I've had on where I quite literally have zero idea what it is you do. So before we jump into things, could you just give me and everybody listening like a brief background on yourself, and then also what is Augmented Hype?
Yeah, sure. So my background's in D2C e-commerce, paid advertising mainly through Facebook and Instagram, so, now obviously called Meta platforms. And late last year, I started experimenting with augmented reality ads for Meta. And I had some amazing results with the agency I was working with. And then I began Augmented Hype off the back of that. And what we've been focusing on is helping online businesses, mainly e-commerce businesses and agencies, to leverage augmented reality marketing in a variety of ways. So whether that's through the ad platforms, through your site, through post-purchase experiences, there's literally iterations of ways to use it. And it's really like a lot of education into how it can be used strategically and in different ways with your objective in mind. So essentially, yeah, it's really what it is at its core is it's an immersive ad or an immersive experience that you can offer your potential clients or even your customers who've already purchased from you in a way of getting them to experience your brand or the product in a much more of a deeper way. And we focus a lot heavily on augmented reality ads. So that's obviously can be front of the funnel and different parts of the marketing funnel. So yeah, I think that should be a good explanation.
Got it. And is it primarily, so is it a service or is it a technology platform, or is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, so it's a service, and I do feel it's going to evolve into more of a platform eventually. But okay. I do, because of my background, I understand, getting to understand people and their needs more is the best way of creating something like that. So primarily working with agencies and with brands themselves just helps me to understand what, how this can fit into people's businesses and the different ways and different objectives it can be used for, all different parts of the ecosystem. So at the moment, yeah, we're focused primarily on it being essentially a creative service.
Got it. Okay. And then are you primarily working with e-commerce brands?
Yeah, e-commerce brands, but a few of them directly, but most of the time they're through agencies. So because of my background, it's there's already quite a big network I have of agencies, and it just makes sense for us to essentially act as people's AR specialists within their agency as subcontractors to help them roll it out for their clients.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty specific and specialized too. So I think for the agencies that are working with you, it wouldn't make sense for them to have their own internal AR team because it's very specific. So how did you get into this business in the first place?
So I was struggling a lot with being able to produce the results that the clients I was working with had in mind and their goals to reach them, mainly because of the iOS issue, which obviously doesn't need much the iOS updates that don't need much explanation from last year, not being able to be as granular with the data, and also a mix between those and finding it quite difficult with sort of small, medium brands being able to provide enough creative and a good quality of creative for us to test and really get the results that they're looking for. And AR just came in, as a thing that I really want to look at to enable just, a very strong connection with customers to be made very quickly, and how we could actually, create ways of building data to be used again in custom audiences. because one of the benefits, we can go into a lot of sort of detailed metrics, but one of the benefits that I've noticed from case studies of my own and ones from other platforms, Meta, is that experience time tends to be twice as long as a video view time, for example. So normally between 6 to 30 seconds within the e-commerce sphere, sort of an average, I guess, is what people are used to seeing. With AR, it can be between 30 and 60 seconds. So therefore, you're able to capture people for a longer time, build authority with them, give them a unique experience, but then you can also then use that data for your custom audiences, and it could be enriched a little bit deeper.
Got it. And is that something that you've seen just across the board with ads, that they've evolved into, like, they just seem to be much more sophisticated than they have historically when it comes to like the level of creativity and testing that you have to be able to do at scale?
Yeah, 100%. It's becoming much more, people are used to advertising, and when it gets to a certain plateau of people advertising in a certain way, everybody starts to get banner blindness. And a really good way of standing out, I guess within the last 5 years has been UGC was the big thing that everyone started to focus on. And it's like, okay, cool, have someone who looks like them, who's able to essentially build social proof with them and tell them all the benefits of the product or service that they're eventually going to experience themselves. And I believe the next level to that, or at least a component of it, is essentially going to be people experiencing it themselves. And that's where immersive technologies come in, because VR, which I think is a little bit further off, and AR, and even XR, which is sort of in the middle, all share this immersive experience that people can have and enable you to see things in your space, try them on, imagine what it's like in your life even before you've made the actual conscious decision to purchase. And it's able to be done in such a vivid and emotional and strong way that's why I think AR is going to have a big impact, basically.
Got it. No, that makes sense. What's like your favorite use case of AR that you've either come across or implemented yourself as a part of your work?
Oh, it's a good one. I've got quite a few on my mind. I think probably one of the most recent ones I've seen from Meta. So Meta recently done, you can just have a look on Google, like anyone listening. It's called Groundbreaking AR Case Studies, I believe, or Success Stories from Meta. Okay. And I think it put out middle of June or early July. And they went through 4 different examples of AR, and it's being used for like different objectives. And then my favorite one was actually the Mini, the brand of car. They're struggling to break into not struggling to break into the market, but they're not a very household name within the US. Like within the UK, within Europe, but also within Vietnam, even, it's much bigger and much well known. But I guess within the US, it's a little bit less so. So what they wanted, they wanted a way of, really standing out, building some huge awareness with their audience, and, just being able to do that in a more effective way. And what the AR is, and I'll jump into the results in a second, but what the AR essentially is actually being able to have the Mini plonk down in your living room, and you can just see like all the different, features of it, and like have a look at the quality of it. And the rendering is so amazing. It honestly feels like it's like physically in front of you. And you can even go through like a little slide carousel of colors and things like that. So, the idea is really not to get someone to just click and buy, because, that would be insane if people could do that. But it's just enough for people to go, oh, that's a really cool car, maybe I'll look into that more. And, they built that awareness. And the result that they found was, when they ran this AR creative with their business as usual creative, it had a 59% decrease in ad inventory cost compared to just running the business as usual creative. And the business as usual creative is a non-AR creative, just images, static images and video. So it showed that they were able to reach essentially the same or more people at more than half the price. So it just had a very, very powerful effect for them. So I think that's probably one of my favorites, although I do feel like they could have had a lot more of a interactive part of the experience. But I think that's something that, that's the conversation for another day. They could have done a little bit more with some things, but it was pretty cool.
Got it. And what was that website again? It's the Meta case studies?
Yeah, Meta. So it's called like Groundbreaking. I'll quickly just groundbreaking AR ad study. Do you want me to drop it something?
Yeah, we can include it in the wrap up. I think that would be interesting for people to be able to actually see what it looks like.
Yeah, and I also go
Awesome.
through these case studies in some content I just posted out and things as well. So if you wanted a different breakdown of it, then feel free to look there as well.
Awesome. No, I think that's an interesting part that you bring up, where it's like one thing to get them to click, but it's another to get them to like stay and engage. And just by the nature of augmented reality, you have to interact with it in order to actually leverage it. So I think there's a lot of value there in getting you have to get the customer attention first, but then you keep them there because of the engagement factor that's just inherent to AR. That isn't when it comes to like static landing pages or other things that are more legacy and just boring and not necessarily really well suited for mobile either. So
yeah, that's really well said. I completely agree. And what's interesting about it is when you're in the AR experience in an AR ad on Meta, it's almost like a squeeze page. You can only really choose 3 actions, and the X out button is up on the top corner, and it's really hard to see. So it doesn't grab your attention immediately. And then the 2 call to actions are, of course, if you choose conversions or traffic, this is as your objective, is you have this huge CTA button, and it can be the same, learn more, sign up, buy now or shop now. It's the same ones you get for any other ad, but it's this huge button, and it bounces, it grabs your attention like mad. And then the other option is to take a video and take an image, and then you can immediately share that on multitude of different ways. So you're right, like it forces you into this experience where you just have to interact, or you have to choose to learn more or buy now or take an image, a video, and essentially create UGC. So it's super powerful for that.
do you see a difference in using AR for like top of funnel ads versus remarketing, or you just think across the board that it produces lift?
No, I think it's entirely, I think that's an amazing question, because it really depends on your objective and what you're feeling, you're looking to achieve with it. I definitely don't think it's a magic bullet, and I don't think it's something you should, invest into and then just throw away the rest of your ads. It's definitely part of the broad strategy. And what I always say is I think it's part of your arsenal. It's a very powerful part of your arsenal, but it's definitely part of your arsenal to use. And you can really use it, like at different parts of the funnel. So one example, we were at the cosmetic brand, and essentially at the top of the funnel, we had something that was far more simple, and it was just interactive based. So the instruction was basically to chap your lips. I don't know if it's even called chap your lips, but you basically rub your lips together and then do that, and it changes to the next shade. And that was all it was. And the idea is, the audience of this specific product were the older generation, and with the older lipsticks, you would have to do that to spread it around. But from what I understand now, you don't need to do that as much with the modern lipsticks. So it was very much like a thing, almost like built into older people who are used to doing lipstick in that way. So it definitely appealed to them there. And then what happened is we could then use either like retargeting audiences or people who interact with that specific experience to then have slightly different AR, where they could go through like a different swash of different shades and then go directly to a landing page. I mean, both times they can go directly to a landing page and buy, but really that first idea was to get people to interact and, really have this sort of mentality of, oh, cool, this is for us because it's from our generation and we do this sort of movement. And then the other, really, the lower funnel was to get people to try different shades. And then, basically what it ended up doing was actually increasing average order value, because people would try shades they wouldn't normally think that they suited. And then they, oh, cool, actually, I noticed that darker shade suited me and this lighter shade did too. So basically people would stack the cart. So that's, you can use it definitely at different parts of the funnel. And there's even places where you can use it on the site. So that's a really good way of, keeping the scent with your ads, is people who interact with AR, then they go to the site and they can interact with AR in a different way. And then you can even have it post-purchase. So once people have received the product, then they have a unique AR experience that gives them instructions or gives them some gaming or some incentive or some other way of sort of trying to retain them as a customer and incentivize them to buy more. So yeah, there's so many different ways it can be used.
Yeah, I think the application for certain industries like a skincare or a beauty is wide ranging because of the fact that you can essentially try the product before you even get it. I mean, some of these things are very realistic. Like we work with a beauty brand and they have like an AR try on for your eyeshadow, for your lipstick, for everything basically. And it not only engages the customer, makes them more confident to actually go ahead and make that purchase, but then it reduces returns pretty significantly or just complaints in general because you already get to see what it looks like on you. And then there's like a sharing component to it too. Like, oh my, like, look at how cool this brand is. Like I can try it on before even before I order it. So there's a lot of really cool things that could be done there. And I've even seen it in the wine industry now with like, there's labels that will have AR components to them. So you'll like scan something and then they'll do things. Some of them feel like a little gimmicky, but others I think are pretty engaging and actually pretty cool. So it just varies.
Yeah. I actually did a bit of content on it. Says 19 Crimes, right? Is it Snoop Dogg's wine? I don't know if that's a joke or actually it's wine. It's like Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. Like they have a club wine. Yeah, yes. Right.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely, I just went on the website and there's a ginormous picture of Snoop Dogg. So it's definitely him. I think they did I think maybe he did a collaboration with Martha. Yeah. So she has Martha's shard. So yeah, it's the two of them. That whole thing is just fascinating. I mean, genius, whoever decided to merge the two of them together or pair them up rather, from a marketing perspective. I don't know if like she initiated or he initiated, or it was just some marketing person who was like, this is going to be awesome, but they've been killing it. Like, I think it's revitalized both of their careers pretty, not that it needed revitalizing, but I mean, you see the TV shows, you see stuff like this. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. And Snoop's a genius. Like he's all over Web3, NFTs, metaverses. Yeah. He's done involved. And it's just amazing. Like how someone who's done what he's done, he's still doing stuff all the time. That's super groundbreaking. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did really like that example. And I think that was the example of it. It was like, because it's to do with people telling a story on the label or something like that, which is like, that's a really perfect example of what I was saying about, like, I call it post-purchase AR, but I don't know if that's like, I feel like I'm coining this because I don't know if there even something exists. I imagine it's something like you only get when you buy it. So that can even be an element of selling it, if that makes sense. Like, the whole thing with NFTs is like the exclusivity. And then when you get an NFT, this is a really big, anyone NFT listening, this is definitely what you should be doing, by the way, is have an AR aspect of having the NFT and then let people do something unique. And then they can share it on social media and be like, this is my NFT. There's this. I mean, you can't really get better than that. So you can definitely like elements of that. But there's definitely like one of these quite big misconceptions about AR just being, a virtual try on, or it's just being this sort of gimmicky thing, which is what people have seen. So, it definitely makes a lot of sense. But I really feel that the way we look at AR marketing now in its sort of rudimentary stages is we're using this 2020 technology to basically do like 1980s marketing, where essentially it's like, hey, here's the product. What do you think? Where AR can have so many different ways of interacting with people, engaging emotional responses, behavioral responses, cognitive responses, getting to play games, getting to interact with certain features of the products and understand it more. There's so much more that can be done. And even in that mini example, like I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole, but that was one of the things I would have improved about what they did. They could have even have bits that come out and say, oh, it's a 4-door, and then you click on it and it opens the door and then the seat comes out and it shows you, like it could be so much more interactive. You could show, you're selling a car here. So, you don't go to a car showroom and they just go, look at it. It's beautiful, right? And then you buy it, you get in there. That's what AR can do. You could have, obviously you're maybe confined a little bit by the fact that the file size needs to be smaller within AR platforms, like social AR platforms anyway. but you can always do something creative with it to give people a much deeper emotional response, really, because there's a bit of content I've just put out with a study from Zappa, where they basically break down why AR is effective in a consumer psychology perspective. It is absolutely fascinating, and I'll definitely link that, share that with you as well to share with everyone. But basically, what it showed is with AR, the emotional response was memory recall was 70% higher. So essentially, people can have that stronger connection with your brand, and then they'll recall, then they'll remember you for so much longer. And that's a really good way of it standing out. So yeah, I definitely recommend reading that in a bit more context. So yeah, so many different ways it could be used.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it starts to get applied to industries like outside of e-commerce that maybe aren't as quick to adopt new like trends or technologies. I think it'll be curious to see like cars, for example, what could potentially happen there and what's possible.
Yeah. One industry I see it already starting to have a big echo is the real estate industry, because they've always been quite ahead of the game with 3D, imagery, 3D video and things like that. But you can even have renderings of people's houses, not if you're selling a house, but this is just one example of the perfect home, and then you could have it in your space. You can walk through it, or you can have a mini version that you take the roof off and you have a look at the configuration of the rooms and maybe even move parts around. So that sort of thing makes a lot of sense for that industry. And I guess I'm starting to see some examples of it, but it's still not, still not huge yet.
Yeah, especially for like interior design or stuff like that, where it's very important and very hard to visualize it until you actually see it. And now you can do it in an augmented space and virtually, versus having to actually go ahead and make the damn thing and then be like, oh wow, this isn't actually what I wanted.
Yeah, and I've seen loads of examples of that. But what's really interesting is that the examples are all site-based, which is cool, because that totally makes sense, because people are there to, they're already at that stage because they've come to your site, or maybe they've just come to just learn a bit more about you. But why not have that as a thing that brings people in? And you're like shortening the buyer journey, essentially. If you're letting them try different shades of wallpaper on, or shades of paint on your wall, you could do it from the actual feed, and then you can drive them to a page where it shows it in a room or something. They've already had the experience, so why not continue that throughout, but have it a little bit earlier on, because that could help whole buyer journey shorten.
There's got to be some cool applications for like furniture too. Like, oh, you're already in your place. Well, here's what this chair would look like in your living room, and getting to see that type of thing.
Yeah. Because that's where IKEA are way ahead of the game with this. They've been doing it for a long time, and really there's other people are starting to come up. Like I saw Made.com. I think it's an English brand. I can't remember, but they make rugs, and you could see a rug in your room. But IKEA are basically having whole catalogs made, and actually know the people that do it. And I don't know how it's going to be interactive, but maybe they'll just be site-based or app-based or something like that, where you can just go through hundreds and hundreds of things in your house. And imagine if you're able to basically move into a new home, and then that would fit there, and you're just stacking up your car. You're not even visiting, the crazy maze that they put you through in IKEA. You're able just to choose everything from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it continues to evolve. But are there any tips or tricks or things that you would say to a brand who's trying to figure out how they can dip their toes into AR, especially when it comes to the acquisition side of things?
Yeah, I think one really big thing that I usually say when people come to us and they're sort of asking, how to get started and things, is what is it you have in mind? What's the objective you have first? And within that objective and the things you've already been doing, what's been working? How can you re-envision that into an immersive experience? So that can take place within their ads. It can take place in the organic marketing. They can share it through email, through Messenger. There can be so many different ways, including site, and then obviously also post-purchase. But Like, what is it you're trying to achieve? Like, where are the bottlenecks even? So if your biggest focus right now is like getting a conversion rate up on the site, then focus on 3D AR products or 3D AR like visualizations and designs for the site. Or if it's something within your, there's been a lot of case studies and success stories showing, cheaper ad costs, as that example we went through earlier, higher engagement rate. If this is a big bottleneck with your marketing, then maybe look there as well. Like, you already know or already have a slight idea of the avatars, what they respond to. Okay, cool. Then how do we make that immersive? How do we get people to have the experience they're having with the ad, or the one we want them to have, but actually having it like in real time, essentially? So that's definitely where I'd start. And there's honestly not a lot of literature about it. It's definitely growing. And the more I'm nerding out about AR a lot since sort of I started in September, but I'm seeing much more and more and more people writing about this and even attaching it as a service in their agencies and things. So there's more coming, but it's quite difficult to fund. Yeah,
and I feel like right now it's probably pretty expensive as well too.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that scares people away from it. But it really comes down to like, the complexity of what you're trying to do. Because if you're trying to do something quite simple, so a simple example would be, just like a face filter or something like that, what people normally see in Snapchat or on Reels or, in Instagram, that's a fairly simple way of using AR and obviously that's the one that most people are familiar with. And that's often what people think all AR is as well. But obviously there can be different levels of complexity, just as there could be with different levels of complexity of like video creative. Like, you can have a whole production studio, actors, this, or you could just have like a YouTube video shot on a phone. So it's the same process. And the benefit really with AR is that you could put lots of money into getting a really nice video created and it might bomb. Whereas with AR, you can test the AR and then have a look at the metrics, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we're seeing that people are coming in, for example, but they're not spending a lot of time. Maybe it's too complicated. Okay, let's take that AR back, edit the actual program, and upload it back again and test it. And you can do that. So it's not so much, and the fatigue be, you'll be able to use it for a much longer time period. Like, it doesn't tend to fatigue that quickly. So it's another.
It just allows itself to be able to iterate. Like, you can iterate on it, not only like much quicker, but at scale. And you won't get the creative fatigue because you're able to change and tweak it in different ways. And you're right. I mean, I've heard from 1,000 brands, like, we spent so much money on this video creative and nobody cared. It's like, well, now you have all this B-roll and you have nothing to do with it. So I could see how AR could be really beneficial there. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. I found this fascinating. I'm gonna go download Snapchat again and start playing around with some AR features to dip my toes in the water. But before we hop off, can you just let folks know, and everyone who's listening, where they can find you online?
Yeah, sure. So I think the best place for me to share resources is through my website. So go to augmentedhype.com, and then there's loads of information on there about how different ways of using AR within your marketing. And then there's also some freebies, and then there's links to all our socials and everything on there, and even my profile. And yeah, I just share lots and lots of content to, help educate people on, how to really leverage augmented reality. And also, if you're interested in creating it as a service or even like running them as ads, there's a free Facebook community you can join, which is also linked on the website. Okay,
awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. As always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.